Enric Mas is one of the 60 best cyclists in the world, according to the UCI rankings of the last 5 seasons. He's been on the podium 3 times in the Vuelta a España, and twice top 5 in the general classification of the Tour de France. And remarkably, he's been one of the few humans capable of beating the alien Tadej Pogacar in a one-day classic. However, he is also the rider who receives the most mockery from cycling fans worldwide. So much so that they even dare to insult him after that Spaniard has completed his 5-hour workday sweating on a bicycle. And he's the rider to whom the most continuous flow of jocular nicknames apply. They remind him in each competition names such as La Bestia, the Beast, Pants, or Enric Mas, for when you believe that more is less. In a sport where the amateur generally has a lot of respect for the pro, unless you've suddenly become a monster thanks to a Dave Brailsford-approved TUE, why has this happened to a guy who barely makes headlines outside of Spain, and who none of his rivals consider a threat for the big races? Let's analyse his case, and you can leave a super thanks if you're the kind of person who wants to get the white paint out and put graffiti on the roads of the Alps saying, "Enric Beast, you're our pants." Enric Mas rose to fame thanks to one of the most whitewashed characters in cycling history, Alberto Contador. Thanks to the legendary vegetarian enemy of Lance Armstrong, Mas was able to move to the World Tour in 2017 to one of the best teams in the world, Patrick Lefevere's Quick-Step. And at the time, the friend of Marion Rousse had the protection of the UCI and very good marginal gains for his riders. That same year, he finished second in the Vuelta a Burgos, behind the then Spanish superstar Mikel Landa. And in his first Grand Tour, he helped his master Contador win his final stage as a pro, thanks to home fans pushing him during the climb of the Angliru Pass. And of course without any sanction in the Vuelta a España won by a rider who tested positive for salbutamol. The hype was building in 2018 when he finished in the top 10 in World Tour races like the Tour de Suisse or the Itzulia, but especially with his second-place finish behind terbutaline-doped Simon Yates in the Vuelta a España. Well, he even won a stage in Andorra against Aseti de Coco Lopez. Oh, those extremely thin legs and only 22 years old, and yet he became the biggest hope of the decadent Spanish cycling world post-Operation Puerto. Hope was confirmed in his first Tour de France in 2019, when he placed in the top 5 during the first 2 weeks of the race, while his teammate and sober at that time, Julian Alaphilippe, flew with the yellow jersey in time trials, on high mountain stages and even on the flats, because a Frenchman had to finally win the Tour de France. It could not be for the lover of blondes, but Mas achieved at the age of 23 what many people in his impoverished country wished for, to be able to live without worrying about rents for the rest of his life. But then he made his first big mistake as a professional. He signed for Team Movistar. Abartha Sports is the most important structure in the history of Spanish cycling. Thanks to the triumph of Prebenacid Delgado, who tested positive in the 1988 Tour de France, the close friend of the King of Spain and supreme swindler Mario Conde, president of the bank Banesto, managed to provide sufficient banknotes to the Navarrese friars to make Miguel Indurain a cycling legend, thanks to the teachings of Dr. Francesco Conconi. The skills of José Miguel Echeverri and Eusebio Enzue helped to keep a low profile with Omari Sports and the French authorities. Thanks to their multiple contacts in the Gallic territory, they were able to serve up notorious triumphs, and even Oscar Pereira was given another Tour de France after testing positive for salbutamol, with the necessary TUE, and Piti Valverde was pardoned after being hunted in Operation Puerto. However, by 2020, when Enric Mas signed with the Telefonica team, he'd already become a meme thanks to the insider documentaries where several of the team cyclists were pitted against each other for team leadership, and the inability of the directors to manage simple racing situations was amply demonstrated. If you put together a cyclist who represents the hope for an empty town after the departure of Contador and the end of Petey's career, with the embarrassment caused by those documentaries financed by the team sponsor, well, it all makes a mighty cocktail of demands that Enric Mas himself had accepted when he signed for more than €1 million per year for Team Movistar. We quickly observed that Movistar was not the team of previous campaigns, and the decline that had seemed to begin fell quickly with the arrival of Enric Mas as the new star of the team. The Mallorcan had no problems with teammates like the former Movistar stars, but an alarming and, at the same time, rather laughable lack of self-confidence was observed. We could see it when he angrily hit a car after losing a competition as unimportant as the Volta Valenciana, and that was due to a mechanical failure in his time-trialling bike. And then he declared grandly that his goal for the 2020 Tour de France was to finish in the top 15 of the general classification. Now, for Spanish fans accustomed to winners for 3 decades, thanks to the protection granted in the paradise of world doping, these rather timorous intentions of Enric could be said to be his second big mistake. In fact, in the Tour itself, he achieved a best classification with a notorious 5th-place finish, albeit more than 6 minutes behind Poggi, and this was thanks to his endurance on the wheel of the best in the mountains, and to the fact that the air didn't blow in his face during the entire race. But then he made his third mistake, making the same tactic in each and every Grand Tour he rode, forming the popular Thibaut Pinot effect. You see, something similar happened to the popular French rider involved in Operation Adalas, when his country's press put him at the centre of criticism for failing again and again in the Tour de France, while other men with the same goals, like Romain Bardet, hid in the shadows and received relatively little criticism from the press. This was precisely what happened to Enric Mas, and he became the usual target of journalists who were happy to praise the jokes and nonsense of the other Spanish rider who was fighting for the same goals with similar results, the gregario of Remco Evenepoel, who even has his own fan movement and who never received the fierce criticism of the Movistar rider, despite his abandonments and whiteouts and his general aerodynamic inability to get on a bike against the clock. This only increased the hatred and mockery of Mas, and at the same time increased the rider's insecurities. There was a terrible episode of panic on the descents in a horrible Tour de France 2022. There were episodes of fights with other riders in full competition, and then especially there was his win over Poggi in an Italian village race, before losing to the Slovenian in the really important one, Il Lombardia. These served to boost his confidence, but then it turns out that the confidence has taken a turn for the worse, and now we reach his fourth and final mistake. The results of Mas have not improved since then. He's gone one more season without a win, and only has 2 wins in 5 seasons with Team Movistar. Instead, he's been trying to score as many UCI points as the conservative friars tell him to, so that the team doesn't get relegated from World Tour status. Being in a team that prefers its riders to finish a nondescript 10th place, rather than trying to win with distant attacks or surprising tactics, doesn't help with general popularity. But neither do Enric's statements when he says that he's one of the best climbers in the world. Moreover, according to the guy who was already going thin on top at 22 years old, he says that if he had the gregarios of the Visma team, he too could win a Tour de France, just like the Danish anchovy. Now, unless you actually mean something else and not gregarios, Enric, you're wrong. As we saw in the Volta Catalunya 2024, you tried. For one day you attacked from afar, but you can't live with the best, and that frustrates you. And that makes you generate bad feeling, and the fans, who are empathetic, they know it, they feel it. But look, there's still time to turn your career around. Who knows? Maybe one day the money will come from the Arabs that your boss Unzue desperately wants. And suddenly the performance of the team with Leonardo Piepoli as team manager will suddenly improve. And maybe then they'll stop laughing at you.